I let go of a lot in 2023, and some of it was intentional, some of it wasn't. Some of it just kind of like came about. I want to share the 3 biggest burdens that were lifted from me, along with the one thing that I wish I could get rid of. Maybe next year. Let's go. Hey, how's it going? It's Laura. These are kind of 3 categories or themes, but there are like subcategories to them, so I will break them down with examples. First on the list is this whole go big or go home mentality. I used to always have that, and particularly I think when you start a business and you're looking up, you know, business videos on YouTube, or even just in the personal development, you know, self-help arena, there's a lot of hustle culture. There are a lot of videos that tell you that you have to grind and you have to work 24/7 and you have to constantly be struggling and striving. And I adopted a lot of that for many years, not to the same extent, but I certainly had the mindset that if I wanted, you know, to follow a big goal, if I wanted to achieve a big goal, I had to make these massive sacrifices and just live in abject misery essentially to achieve them. And this is the year that I realized that is not at all the case, certainly not for me. The first way that I implemented this, and probably the most life-changing honestly, is when it comes to resolutions or goals. So every year I would set myself resolutions, and very often they would be pretty big, ambitious ones, whereas this year I decided I'm not going to do that. I'm going to have kind of smaller projects for myself, and I'm just going to chip away at those and take my baby steps. And that made all the difference for me when I finally figured out how to make the steps easy for me to take. You know, when I took that huge, overwhelming burden off myself of having to achieve big things and take big leaps and bounds, when I actually sat down and was able to break my goals down and like come up with this kind of like system for how to do it, I mean, the difference was night and day. I achieved more this year than probably in any previous year. And it started with getting rid of this whole go big or go home idea. I now have this kind of like goal setting structure in place that just runs like clockwork for me. It ensures that I am making regular, consistent progress towards my goals. And it has been a revelation. But another example then for my life is decluttering. So, you know, when I started decluttering, I was doing the KonMari method, which is like pull everything out from one category. And I do think there is merit in that. I think if you have the time and the energy and you're just starting out and you're full of motivation, it can be helpful to do that. But now I'm at a stage in my journey where slow, deliberate decluttering is the way to go. If you've been following me for a while, you'll know that I'm doing a year-long closet declutter challenge. So previously what I was doing, and I did this almost every year, probably since I started decluttering, since I started the KonMari method, where I would pull everything out of my closet. And it would take me a substantial amount of time and energy to go through everything in one go, or maybe even spread over like 2 or 3 days. Whereas now, it's a year-long process. I'm just focusing on what I actually like wearing and what are the things that I keep skipping over. So I turned all of my hangers around. I'll link the video up here if you haven't seen it. I've turned all my hangers around and I've given myself a year to wear everything that's in my closet. I have a lot of clothes. I understand that. But by doing that, I have been able to get rid of a lot of clothes just by taking that slow, steady approach. I think sometimes with decluttering, as with many things in life, it can take a while for you to process certain things, or it can take a while for you to get used to certain things, or to gain the experience and the knowledge that you need to make strides. If you only do it in one go, you might not be at a stage where you can make certain decisions. Whereas when you let it be a process, then you can start to chip away at things and take lessons that you're learning and implement them in the future. And that is what I have found, what I'm finding right now, is working really well for me. It's also changed my perspective when it comes to gift giving, which is very relevant to this time of year. But previously I thought, you know, I had to give loads of gifts and I had to make it this big extravagant thing. Whereas this year I'm like, nah, like 1 or 2 gifts totally fine. I'm no longer doing the go big or go home thing. I want to be at home. I want to be at home. So I'm taking my time. I'm being more intentional about certain things, and I'm not going all in on absolutely everything, because I think that's just a recipe for disaster. Next thing I'm getting rid of then, and hallelujah for this one, I'm getting rid of regrets. I shared in an earlier video, I will link it for you if you haven't seen it, but this was a big year of acceptance for me, a big year of making my peace with certain things. There were certain things that I did in the past that I regret doing. Now, if I could turn back the clock and change them, would I? Yes, I would. But I've let go of that feeling of shame or guilt or resentment or whatever it was. I've just learned to accept it for what it is, and I can't change it, and therefore all I can do is move forward with, the new experience and the new knowledge and the new wisdom that I have, and I can vow never to repeat those mistakes. But it's also in other areas of my life. So you may have heard me talk about regrets that I have around decluttering, certain things that I regretted decluttering. And again, because this was the year that I kind of made my peace with certain things, there was a particular pair of shoes. You may have heard the story. Again, I will link it. But there were a particular pair of shoes that I decluttered many years ago and kind of regretted it. There were many points in time since then that I regretted it and that I wished that I still had those shoes. And like I said, I, for some reason, made my peace with that, because I figured it's been so many years since I got rid of them that even if I had kept them, I would have had to get rid of them in the meantime, because they would have just fallen apart. So I had this, epiphany, this kind of letting go of those regrets, and it has been very freeing. Another kind of, it's not necessarily a regret, but I went through postnatal depression, and for years since, I felt a lot of anger and resentment, not like towards myself, but just towards the situation in general, that it had robbed me of so much, that it had, put me into this really bleak place. And I felt that I had wasted, not, intentionally or anything, again, it wasn't really, focused on me, but I felt that those years had been wasted. And I felt, I had a lot of negative feelings towards that. And really, again, one of those things that if I could turn back the clock and redo it, I would prefer if I had had a different experience. Particularly because I don't plan on having any more children. Like, that was kind of like my one and done. That was my one and only experience. And unfortunately, in the beginning, was a very bad one, and I don't get to redo it. You can't, even if I did have another child, it's not like it erases the experience I had with my first. So that I had a lot of resentment built up in me around that whole thing. But again, this year I let that go. I realized once again, it's not something I can change. I did the best that I could. I love my daughter. I have made sure that she is happy and healthy, and I have done as much as I can possibly do, and that's all that anyone can do. I did my best in the circumstance that I was in, and I forgive myself, I forgive the situation, and I made my peace with it. And 10 years later, a decade later, I can finally move on from that. I was carrying around a lot of negativity, a lot of resentment, a lot of regrets, just a lot of burdens for so many years. And now this year, I have been able to set them down. I will be leaving those in 2023. Another thing that I am very grateful, very glad to be leaving in 2023. Honestly, I wasn't sure if this was ever going to be possible for me. I left behind, for the most part, I would say 99% of it, chronic pain. Ever since my daughter was born, and for so long nobody could tell me why. They still can't really tell me why, but I have since found out what is wrong with me. But ever since she was born, I have been experiencing chronic, debilitating chest pains. I am talking chest pain to the level where I've had to attend at the hospital, because it's like I can't breathe, I can't move. It is intense pain. And is every day like that? No. Am I in pain every single day? No. But at the beginning of this year even, I was experiencing pain on like various, you know, there's a sliding scale obviously, but pain of some degree, to some degree, multiple times a week basically. And it was awful, obviously, but it was not only physically exhausting, it was mentally and emotionally exhausting, because, you know, when I had the pain, it was awful, but even after the pain had gone, there's something that I call shadow pain, which is even after the pain has gone, and you've probably experienced this if you've ever been sick, like the recovery sometimes can drag on, and that can be very draining. Shadow pain for me is almost like a bruise. You know, after you get a bash or something, after that initial pain has worn off, you have that bruise, and even though the pain is gone, there's still like a tenderness. There's still that shadow of the pain. There's still that reminder that something still isn't fully healed. And then there's just a general kind of anxiety around not knowing when or if pain is going to hit you again and how bad it's going to be. Like sometimes I would feel a little twinge and I would immediately start panicking, like, is this going to disappear in a few seconds, or is this going to escalate to the point that I can't move and I need to get to the hospital? So that's where I was at the beginning of the year, and this has kind of been a journey of mine for the past few years, where I have been having scans and procedures and tests and all sorts, like all these investigations to try and figure out why I'm experiencing this pain, or like what is causing it. And this year I finally got an answer, and I am now taking medication that hasn't like 100% cured me, but has certainly significantly lessened the amount of pain I'm in and how regularly I'm experiencing pain. So like I said, at the beginning of the year, several times a week. Now, once or twice a month. Do I wish I were completely free of it? Yes, I do, but I think now at least I'm on the right path. I have made significant improvements. Like this has really changed my life. Essentially, I know that term is like thrown around a lot, but it really has. I've gone from regular pain to now, like I said, once or twice a month, which is manageable. It is a lot easier to deal with, and even the pain is no longer at a level where I can't talk or breathe. It's at a stage where I can still, for the most part, like move around. Now, yes, it does kind of like wipe me out, it does drain me, but at the same time, it's not as regular, it's not as frequent an occurrence as it used to be. So when I tell you, leaving that situation in 2023, okay, it's not 100% healed, but I am getting there. Even if I never get to 100% healing, I am still so much further than I was. I have a much better quality of life than I did. So happy to leave that horrendousness in 2023 and hopefully never look back. Let's talk about the thing that I wish I could get rid of. You know, maybe next year will be my year, but this has been like an ongoing thing since I was a kid, basically. So I don't know how possible it is, but it's seeking validation from other people. Sometimes I run myself into the ground for other people, or I do things wanting somebody else's approval, somebody else's praise. I do things to make myself seem like a better person, a more helpful person, a really kind person, a generous person, a more giving person, or whatever. I can go out of my way to seek validation or approval from somebody else, and it can really be detrimental to me. It's kind of a weird one because in so many ways I am very selfish. I'm very independent. I spend a lot of time by myself. I really, in most cases, prioritize myself, and I prioritize my self-care and my downtime and all of that. But at the same time, there are certain situations where I will go out of my way for someone else just so that they think I'm a good person. And it doesn't really make sense, but I have often put myself in situations where I will just give and give and give until I have nothing left to give, until I'm completely depleted. And then I end up just completely spent, like not able to do anything else, not having anything left for me. Anyway, that's my 10 cents on that. If you are looking to let go of a lot of things in 2024, maybe you've been decluttering here and there and you're ready to just like have a mass exodus of clutter from your life, check out this video right here. If your life still feels cluttered, it's probably because you have disregarded or ignored or weren't even aware of one of these. Free yourself from these burdens in 2024, and until next time, go raibh míle maith agaibh. Agus feici mé sibh se glua. Slán!